They showed up at my door at 7 a.m., flashing badges I hadn't expected and staring like I'd committed a crime. All because I denied one woman access to the pool. It wasn't about chlorine, guest passes, or HOA rules. It was about control. And I was about to learn just how far she'd go. What would you do if someone weaponized the police over a simple misunderstanding? What I had waiting for her would change everything, but she had no idea it was coming. Willowbrook Estates looked perfect from the outside. Manicured lawns, sparkling sidewalks, and the kind of quiet mornings that made you believe the world had paused just for you. I'd moved here hoping for peace, a fresh start after years of watching life slip through my fingers. My house overlooked the community pool, a little oasis I imagined Miguel and I would enjoy together that summer. Miguel, my 16-year-old nephew, was visiting from Phoenix for the first time in months. Smart, polite, full of energy. The closest thing to family I had left. We spent mornings sipping coffee on the porch, watching the sunlight dance on the water, listening to laughter echo from the lap swimmers. Life had finally settled into a gentle rhythm, the kind that makes you forget. The world outside your gates. That rhythm shattered the day Karen Mitchell appeared. Blonde highlights, pristine designer clothes, clipboard in hand, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was HOA vice president, married to a city councilman, and convinced the pool rules were law itself. I barely knew her, yet her gaze carried the weight of judgment, the kind that could make grown adults feel small. It started with a simple question: guest passes? And ended with a swirl of confusion, embarrassment, and the first hint that life here might not be as peaceful as I'd hoped. Little did I know, denying that pool access would pull me into a battle that no one saw coming, and Karen had absolutely no idea what I had waiting for her. It was a Tuesday when Miguel invited a couple of his friends over for a pool day, something innocent, simple, and, so I thought, harmless. The sun glistened off the water as the boys splashed, laughter punctuating the quiet morning. That's when Karen appeared, like a storm in designer athleisure, clipboard in hand. The mix of chlorine and her overpowering vanilla perfume hit me first, a nauseating warning I didn't recognize at the time. "Guest passes?" she demanded, her tone sharp enough to slice through the laughter. I explained patiently. Miguel and his friends were family, just visiting for the summer. She glanced at her clipboard, eyes narrowing. "Rules are rules, Mr. Martinez," she said, voice echoing across the pool deck. "Pool privileges suspended pending compliance review." The A? Boys' faces fell. Towels wrapped around shoulders, confusion etched into their expressions. Other residents froze mid-lap or mid-conversation, pulling out phones, pretending to text, avoiding eye contact. Fear, subtle but palpable, radiated from every corner. I could feel it, the way Karen's power bent the space around her, how quickly. A pool could feel like a courtroom. That night, she posted a notice on the community board. Lot 47 pool privileges suspended pending review. Her words weren't just rules. They were a public statement, a warning to anyone who might think to challenge her. At the weekly HOA meeting, she reinforced it with theatrical disappointment, the kind designed to humiliate rather than correct. It was personal, and I knew it. 3 days later, a certified letter landed in my mailbox. A compliance hearing was scheduled. The timing, Thursday, Sarah's birthday. The violations, trash cans, lawn height, guest management, each more ridiculous than the last, none of them true. My heart sank, but years of legal experience began clicking into place. I read every HOA document I'd signed, every page of the community charter. That's when I found it. Gold. Reasonable accommodation for family gatherings. A direct contradiction to her guest pass demands. Karen had no idea she'd just handed me the roadmap to dismantle her case. She escalated quickly, organizing neighborhood. Watch patrols, daily drive-bys, photographing everything. Every minor deviation became a violation. Even neighbors who once waved now looked down at their phones, wary of being associated with the rebellious lot. Miguel joked that Karen was stalking us, but I saw the strain in his eyes. He shouldn't have to navigate this kind of tension. At 16. Meanwhile, I quietly connected with allies on the board. Maria Santos, the treasurer, hinted at financial inconsistencies in HOA records. Jim Walsh, the president, shared stories of families who'd moved away rather than endure Karen's tactics. Piece by piece, I began logging everything. Timestamps, photographs, patrol schedules, procedural violations. Karen believed she was controlling the narrative, but each aggressive move only strengthened my position, exposing cracks in her armor that she didn't even realize existed. And then came the escalation. One Friday, Miguel and his friends returned to the pool, fully compliant with designated hours. Karen appeared again, now with 2 patrol volunteers, the trio forming a theatrical enforcement squad. "Exit the pool immediately," she commanded, voice booming across the water. They complied, but Karen followed them to my house. Entourage in tow, voices rising. Instead of confrontation, I began recording her on my phone. "Karen," I said, calm and deliberate, "can you cite the bylaw that justifies this suspension?" She continued ranting, oblivious to the camera capturing every word, every implication. Neighbors peeked from windows, uneasy with the spectacle. Mrs. Chen from across the street shook her head. The Johnsons exchanged knowing glances. Karen was weaponizing power, but she had no idea how far I could push back. That night, I emailed the recording to the HOA board. A formal complaint. Professional. Detailed, documenting timestamps, witness accounts, and her pattern of harassment. An emergency meeting was called for the following Tuesday. Karen's predictable defense, protecting community values, was on record. But I had started uncovering things she'd never imagined would be exposed. By the time Friday arrived, I was ready. Evidence compiled, strategy set, allies in place. Karen thought she was cornering me. She had no idea that the moment of reckoning was fast approaching. Tuesday evening arrived, the air thick with tension. I stepped into the HOA board meeting, armed with every document, every timestamp, every piece of evidence I had painstakingly compiled. My chest was tight, not from fear, but from anticipation. Karen sat at the head of the table, perfectly poised, her clipboard acting as both shield and weapon. Her smirk said she thought she'd already won. She opened with her presentation, slides. Statistics, procedural claims, all meant to intimidate. I listened, calm, letting the absurdity wash over me. Then I began, slow and deliberate. "Before we proceed," I said, "let's review the procedural violations that render this hearing invalid." I laid out the 48-hour notice, the improper, scheduling, and the violations cited without foundation. I pulled out the charter, highlighted and tabbed. "Reasonable accommodation for family gatherings," I read aloud. "Miguel's summer friends. My nephew." Every detail fit squarely within this clause. A murmur rippled through the room. Jim Walsh shifted uncomfortably. Maria Santos raised an eyebrow. Karen's smirk faltered. She tried to pivot, attacking me, personally insinuating I couldn't adjust after recent loss. Her words hung in the air, desperate and hollow. I remained calm, methodical. Then came the evidence she hadn't expected. Photographs of her patrols, detailed logs of violations, selectively enforced the financial irregularities Maria had quietly handed me. Slide by slide, fact by fact, the illusion crumbled. Karen's meticulous control, her intimidation tactics, the fear she'd instilled in neighbors, all exposed. Her face flushed, fingers tapping the table faster. She sputtered, searching for a foothold. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Every board member was watching. Every eye including hers, fixed on the undeniable truth. Her actions were not just unfair, they were reckless, manipulative, and in violation of her own charter. I leaned forward, voice steady, almost gentle. "This isn't about pool rules," I said. "This is about abusing authority, and everyone in this room can see it now." The weight of the words hit the table like a hammer. Karen's smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. For the first time, she realized she had underestimated me completely. Every procedural misstep, every selective enforcement, every intimidation tactic, all laid bare. She thought she was untouchable. She wasn't. Not anymore. By the time the meeting adjourned, the air felt different, lighter, charged with a sense of justice finally set in motion. Karen sat in stunned silence, her usual air of control evaporated. The board, once intimidated by her theatrics, now had clarity. The letters, fines, and patrols ceased almost immediately. Residents who had quietly suffered under her reign finally breathed easier, sharing subtle nods and whispered thanks as they passed. For me, the impact was profound. Miguel smiled, relieved that summer afternoons could again be spent by the pool, without fear. I felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that meticulous preparation, patience, and persistence had turned the tables. It wasn't just a victory for me. It was a message to anyone who underestimated the consequences of abusing power. In the following weeks, Karen's influence waned. Her patrols disappeared, her notices stopped, and the neighborhood slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. People waved freely again, laughter returned to the poolside, and the sense of community that had first drawn me here began to flourish once more. But the experience left a mark. I couldn't forget the ease with which authority could be weaponized, or how quickly fear spread among neighbors. What I learned was simple yet powerful. Rules alone do not define justice. Integrity, awareness, and courage do. By standing firm, documenting everything, and using knowledge wisely, even a single person can challenge a system built on intimidation. As I watched Miguel dive into the water, carefree and laughing, I realized something crucial. Peace isn't given. It's earned, often through conflict, vigilance, and the refusal to remain silent. Karen had assumed she held all the cards, but she had underestimated one thing: resolve backed by preparation. And the question that lingered long after the chlorine scent faded and the neighborhood returned to its quiet rhythm was this: how many battles are quietly being fought behind closed doors by people no one expected to fight back? And who would you become if it were your turn?